The black ships moved through space like death itself. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars bend around their fleet as they traveled faster than light. Behind him, 300 Zorvak warships followed in perfect formation. They had done this dance 17 times before, across 17 different star systems. Each time the result was the same. "Sir, we are approaching the human system they call Sol," reported his communications officer. "Their outer colonies are sending distress signals." Kethvar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Zorvak had evolved from predators, and conquest was in their blood. Good fear makes them easier to control. Send a standard message to their government. The message was simple and had worked on every species they encountered. Submit or die. No negotiations, no discussions. Just complete surrender or total destruction. The Zorvak had perfected this system over decades of conquest. Why waste time with diplomacy when overwhelming force was so much more effective? Captain Jake Morrison was loading cargo containers onto his ship Liberty's Edge when the alarms started screaming. The space station around him erupted into chaos as people ran in every direction. His crew chief, Paul Johnson, came running up the loading ramp with fear in his eyes. "Captain, you need to see this," Paul said, breathing hard. "The news feeds are going crazy. Something big is happening." Jake followed Paul to the communications room, where the main screen showed a news reporter trying to stay calm while reading from a paper that shook in her hands. "Reports are coming in from the outer colonies that an alien fleet has entered human space. The ships are massive and moving toward the inner systems. Government officials are asking everyone to remain calm." "Aliens?" Jake asked. "Are you sure? This isn't some kind of joke?" Paul pointed to another screen showing grainy footage from a deep space probe. The images showed ships that were clearly not human. They were dark, angular, and huge. Even from the distance the probe was recording, Jake could tell each ship was many times larger than anything humans had ever built. "How many ships are there?" Jake asked. "Nobody knows for sure," Paul replied. "The probe was destroyed right after it sent this footage, but the estimates are saying hundreds." Jake felt a cold fear creep up his spine. His cargo ship was designed to carry supplies between colonies, not fight wars. The Liberty's Edge had no weapons, no armor, and no chance against even one of those alien ships, let alone hundreds. The news reporter continued reading updates. "New Geneva colony has gone silent. Last transmission indicated alien ships were approaching their system. Epsilon Station is also not responding to communication attempts." Jake knew both of those places. He had delivered cargo to New Geneva just last month. The colony had over 2 million people living there. Epsilon Station was a major hub for trade and travel. If both places had gone silent, it meant the aliens were moving fast and taking everything in their path. "Sir," called out Lisa Rodriguez, his communications officer, "I'm picking up military transmissions on the emergency channels. It sounds like Earth Command is trying to figure out what's happening." Jake grabbed the microphone. "This is cargo. Vessel Liberty's Edge requesting information on the alien threat. What are your orders?" A tired voice came back through the static. "All civilian vessels are ordered to return to Earth immediately. Do not attempt to engage the alien fleet. Repeat, do not engage. Return to Earth." But Jake knew they couldn't reach Earth in time. The Liberty's Edge was in the outer system, 3 days away from Earth, even at maximum speed. If the aliens were moving as fast as the reports suggested, they would reach Earth long before his ship could get there. On Earth, President Maria Santos sat in the emergency bunker deep beneath the White House. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials, all trying to make sense of what was happening. Admiral Karen Wright, the head of Earth's Space Navy, stood at the main display showing the positions of human and alien ships. "Madam President, we have 47 ships in the entire fleet," Admiral Wright said. "Intelligence suggests the alien force has at least 300 vessels, each one larger and more advanced than our biggest battleship. What about weapons?" President Santos asked. "Can we fight them?" Dr. Alan Cooper, the chief scientist, shook his head. "Early reports from the destroyed colonies suggest their technology is far beyond ours. Their ships have energy shields that deflect our weapons. Their speed is incredible, and their firepower, double quotes. He paused, looking at the data. One of their ships destroyed Epsilon Station with a single shot. President Santos felt the weight of the entire human race on her shoulders. 7 billion people on Earth, plus millions more in the colonies, all depending on her decisions. Have they tried to communicate with us? Yes, ma'am, said the communications chief. The message is simple. They want our complete surrender. No negotiations, no terms. Just surrender or they will destroy everything. And if we surrender? She asked. Unknown, Admiral Wright replied. But based on what happened to the other colonies, surrender doesn't seem to guarantee survival. Back on the Liberty's edge, Jake and his crew watched the news feeds with growing horror. One by one, human colonies were being taken or destroyed. The pattern was always the same. The alien ships would arrive, demand surrender, and then either occupy the world or destroy it completely. No colony had been able to resist them. Captain, Paul said, maybe we should hide in the asteroid belt. If we shut down all our systems, they might not find us. Jake considered this. The asteroid belt was huge, and a single cargo ship could hide there for months if necessary. But hiding wouldn't save the billions of people on Earth and the other colonies. It would just delay the inevitable. Look at this, Lisa called out, pointing to her screen. I'm picking up a transmission from Haven's Rest. Commander Lisa Park is sending a final message. The voice that came through the speakers was calm but filled with sadness. This is Commander Lisa Park at Haven's Rest Outpost. The alien fleet has arrived. I repeat, the aliens have arrived. They gave us 1 hour to surrender. We tried to negotiate, but they won't listen. They don't want to talk. They don't want anything except complete submission. There was a pause, and then her voice continued. They're not like us. They don't see us as equals. To them, we're just another species to conquer. Tell Earth that resistance is the transmission cut to static. Jake stared at the silent speakers. Haven's Rest had been a small research outpost with maybe 50 people. Now it was gone, just like all the others. The aliens were moving through human space like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Sir, Lisa said quietly, I'm detecting the alien fleet on long-range sensors. They're heading for Earth. At their current speed, they'll be there in 18 hours. Jake looked at his crew. Paul, who had served with him for 5 years. Lisa, who had joined just last year, but had become like family. The rest of his crew, good people who had signed up to haul cargo, not fight in wars. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. Set course for Earth, Jake said finally. Maximum speed, sir, Paul said. We won't make it in time. And even if we do, what can we do against their fleet? Jake didn't have an answer. The Liberty's Edge was just a cargo ship. They had no weapons, no armor, no chance against the alien fleet. But he couldn't just hide in the asteroids while Earth was destroyed. Even if they could only watch, at least they would be there when humanity made its final stand. The Liberty's Edge turned toward Earth and began its desperate race against time, carrying a crew that knew they were probably flying toward their deaths but couldn't do anything else. Behind them, the alien fleet continued its relentless advance, confident that humanity would fall just like all the others before them. They had faced no resistance so far. Why should humans be any different? The war room beneath Earth buzzed with desperate activity. Admiral Karen Wright stood before a massive display showing the solar system. Red dots marked the approaching alien fleet, while blue dots showed Earth's scattered naval forces. The numbers were not encouraging. We have ships coming in from 12 different systems, Admiral Wright reported to President Santos. But most won't arrive before the aliens reach Earth. We'll have maybe 40 ships to defend our home world. President Santos studied the display with tired eyes. She had not slept in 36 hours, and the weight of command was crushing her. What about the orbital defense platforms? They're old and designed to stop pirates, not a full invasion fleet, Wright replied. Our best estimate is they'll last maybe 10 minutes against the alien weapons. Dr. Alan Cooper rushed into the room carrying a tablet and looking excited despite the circumstances. Madam President, I think we found something. The wreckage from Kepler Station finally reached our recovery ships. We've been analyzing the alien technology. Cooper activated the main display, showing detailed scans of twisted metal and strange energy readings. Their shields work on a specific frequency pattern. It creates a barrier that absorbs energy from our weapons. But every barrier has a weakness. What kind of weakness? Admiral Wright asked. If we can match the exact frequency and create a resonance pattern, we might be able to disrupt their shields. It's like breaking a wine glass with a high-pitched sound, but with energy instead of sound waves. President Santos felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. Can we do it? Can we modify our weapons? Cooper's excitement faded slightly. It's possible, but difficult. We would need to strip out the guidance systems from our quantum torpedoes and replace them with frequency generators. The torpedoes would become unguided projectiles. We'd get one shot, and we'd have to get very close to make it count. Close, Wright asked. Close enough to see their hull markings. Cooper replied grimly. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. The ships would have to fly directly at the alien vessels, hoping to survive long enough to fire their modified weapons. It was basically a suicide mission. I'll do it, came a voice from the back of the room. Captain Steve Miller stepped forward. He was young for a ship captain, only 32, but he had proven himself in several battles against pirates. Destroyer Defiant Star can be modified quickly. We're already scheduled to join the defense fleet. Steve, Admiral Wright said, you understand what you're volunteering for. Even if the modifications work, you'll be flying straight into the enemy fleet with no guidance systems for your weapons. Miller nodded. I understand, but if we don't try this, Earth falls anyway. At least this way we have a chance. Within hours, the Titan shipyards became a hive of activity. Engineers worked around the clock to modify the Defiant Star's weapon system. Captain Miller's crew of 80 volunteers knew they were probably not coming back, but none of them asked to be transferred. They had families on Earth, and they were willing to die to protect them. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez ran simulation after simulation on the ship's computers. The results were always the same. Even with the modifications, their chances of success were less than 5%. She didn't tell Captain Miller about the odds. He had enough to worry about. How's it looking, Amy? Miller asked as he watched his crew prepare for what might be their final mission. The targeting system is as good as we can make it without guidance computers, Rodriguez replied. But we'll need to be within 2,000 meters of their shields to have any chance of the frequency disruption working. 2,000 meters was nothing in space combat. Most battles were fought at distances of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Getting that close to an enemy ship meant flying through all of their defensive fire while hoping not to get shot down. What about our own shields? Miller asked. We had to remove half the power cells to make room for the frequency generators, Rodriguez said. Our shields will be at 30% strength. Not enough to stop their main weapons. Miller looked out at Earth through the shipyard windows. He could see the blue and green planet spinning slowly in space, unaware that its fate would be decided in the next few hours. Somewhere down there, his wife Helen was probably watching the news and worrying about him. His daughter Katie was only 5 years old. She wouldn't understand why Daddy had to go fight the monsters from space. Sir called out his communications. Officer, we're receiving the alien ultimatum. They want an answer in 6 hours. The message was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone could hear it. The alien voice was cold and mechanical, speaking through a translation device. People of Earth, you will surrender completely. You will hand over all weapons. You will submit to Zorvac rule. You have 6 solar hours to comply. If you refuse, your planet will be destroyed. This is not negotiable. President Santos appeared on every screen across Earth minutes later. She stood behind the presidential podium, looking directly into the cameras. My fellow humans, we have received the alien ultimatum. They demand our complete surrender. They want us to give up everything that makes us human, our freedom, our dignity, our right to choose our own future. She paused, and Miller could see the determination in her eyes. I have consulted with military. Leaders, scientists, and representatives from every nation on Earth. Our answer is simple. We will not surrender. We will not bow down to tyrants, no matter how powerful they claim to be. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human soul will stand against this threat. Across Earth, people watched their president with mixed emotions. Some were terrified, others were angry, but most felt something they had not felt since the crisis began. They felt proud to be human. We may not win, President Santos continued. Our technology is not as advanced as theirs. Our ships are not as powerful. Our weapons are not as deadly. But we have something they don't understand. We have the will to fight for what we believe in. We have the courage to stand up to bullies. And we have each other on the Defiant Star. Miller's crew listened to the speech while making final preparations. Chief Engineer Paul Davis finished installing the last frequency generator and wiped sweat from his forehead. That's it, sir. The modifications are complete. But I have to warn you, these systems are completely untested. They might work perfectly, or they might explode the moment we fire them. Understood, Miller replied. How long do we have? The alien fleet will reach Earth's orbit in 4 hours, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Admiral Wright wants all ships in defensive formation. Within 3 hours, Miller activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Miller to all crew. You've all heard the president's speech. You know what we're facing. In a few hours, we're going to fly directly at ships that have destroyed entire worlds. Our weapons might not work. Our shields are weak, and we're probably not coming home. He paused, looking around at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. But if we succeed, if we can prove that these aliens can be hurt, then maybe the other ships will have a chance. Maybe Earth will survive. Maybe our families will live to see another day. The crew members looked at each other and nodded. They had made their choice. Take us out, Miller ordered. The Defiant Star left the shipyard and moved toward Earth's outer orbit, where it would join the small fleet, preparing to face an enemy that had never known defeat. Behind them, civilian ships throughout the solar system began arming themselves with whatever weapons they could find. Mining lasers, construction charges, even cargo containers filled with explosives. If Earth was going to fall, it would not fall quietly. The countdown to humanity's first real test had begun. The first shots of the war lit up space like deadly fireworks. Admiral Wright's fleet met the Zorvac advanced ships at the edge of the solar system, hoping to slow them down before they reached Earth. The human ships looked like toys compared to the massive alien vessels, but they fought with everything they had. Captain Miller watched from the bridge of the Defiant Star as the battle began. Bright flashes of energy weapons crossed the darkness between the fleets. Human missiles exploded harmlessly against alien shields, while return fire tore through human armor like paper. Within minutes, 3 human ships were destroyed. Sir, Admiral Wright is ordering us to begin our attack run, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Her voice was steady, but Miller could see her hands shaking slightly as she worked at her console. All hands, prepare for combat, Miller announced over the ship's communication system. Remember, we need to get within 2,000 meters of their shields. Stay focused and trust your training. The Defiant Star broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the largest alien ship in the formation. It was a massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of Miller's destroyer. Strange symbols glowed along its dark hull, and energy crackled around its shield generators. Incoming fire, called out the weapons officer. They're targeting us with their main guns. Beams of purple energy lanced through space, missing the Defiant Star by only a few hundred meters. The heat from the near misses made the ship's hull glow red in places. Miller gripped his command chair as the ship shook from the shockwaves. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Get us closer. The ship twisted and turned through the alien fire, using every trick Miller had learned in his years of combat. But the aliens were learning too. Their shots were getting closer with each pass. A direct hit would destroy the Defiant Star instantly. 1,000 meters to target, Rodriguez announced. The frequency generators are charged and ready. Miller could see the alien ship's hull clearly now. It was covered in strange patterns and weapon ports. Smaller ships moved around it like insects, firing at the approaching human vessel. The Defiant Star's shields flared as enemy fire struck them, and warning alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Shield strength down to 15%, reported the chief engineer. We can't take much more of this. 500 meters, Rodriguez called out. We're in range. Fire all modified torpedoes, Miller ordered. 6 quantum torpedoes launched from the Defiant Star, each one carrying a frequency generator instead of a guidance system. They flew in straight lines toward the alien ship, and Miller held his breath as he watched them approach the enemy shields. The first torpedo struck the alien barrier and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the second torpedo hit, and the third. Suddenly, the alien ship's shields began to flicker and spark. The energy barrier that had protected it from every human weapon started to collapse. It's working, Rodriguez shouted over the noise of battle. Their shields are failing. The remaining torpedoes struck the alien hull directly, tearing holes in the armor and causing explosions along the ship's surface. For the first time in their conquest, the Zorvak had taken real damage from an enemy weapon, but the victory was short-lived. The massive alien ship, though damaged, was still functional. Its main weapons turned toward the Defiant Star, and Miller knew his ship could not survive a direct hit from those guns. All power to engines, he ordered. Get us out of here! Before the Defiant Star could escape, a beam of energy struck its port side. The explosion tore through the ship's hull, killing half the crew instantly. Miller felt the ship spinning out of control as systems failed throughout the vessel. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, the engineer reported. We're losing atmosphere fast. Miller looked around his bridge. Rodriguez was unconscious at her station, blood running from her head. Wound, the weapons officer was dead, crushed by a fallen beam. Only a handful of his crew were still alive, and the ship was dying around him. This is Captain Miller to all ships, he said into his communicator. The frequency weapons work. You can hurt them. Don't let our sacrifice be for nothing. The alien ship's weapons charge for a final shot that would destroy the Defiant Star completely. Miller closed his eyes and thought of his wife and daughter on Earth. At least he had proven the aliens could be defeated. Then, from the asteroid belt, where no one expected it, came a transmission that surprised both fleets. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the cargo vessel Liberty's Edge. I've been watching this fight, and I've seen enough. Morrison's ship emerged from behind a large asteroid, moving at full speed toward the battle. The Liberty's Edge was not a warship. It was a simple cargo hauler designed to carry supplies between colonies. But Chief Engineer Paul Johnson had been busy during their 3-day journey from the outer system. Paul, are you sure those modifications will work? Morrison asked as his ship approached the alien fleet. Honestly, Captain, I have no idea, Johnson replied from the engine room. I've connected every power cell we have to the plasma conduits. If it works, we'll have the most powerful energy discharge this side of a star. If it doesn't work, we'll probably explode. Morrison had watched the battle unfold on his ship's sensors. He had seen the Defiant Star's brave attack and Captain Miller's sacrifice. The cargo captain was not a soldier, but he was human, and he could not stand by while his species was destroyed. All Zorvak vessels. This is the human ship Liberty's Edge. Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. You want to know what resistance looks like? Let me show you. The alien commander, Admiral Kethvar, watched in amazement from his flagship as the primitive cargo ship charged directly toward his formation. His ships had just destroyed a human warship, and now a simple freight hauler was attacking his entire fleet. The humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane. Should we target the cargo ship, sir? Asked his weapons officer. No, Kethvar replied. Let it come. I want to see what this primitive vessel thinks it can accomplish against our fleet. The Liberty's Edge flew past the wreckage of the Defiant Star, where Captain Miller's ship was breaking apart. Morrison saw the destruction and felt anger burning in his chest. These aliens had come to human space uninvited. They had destroyed colonies and killed millions of people. They thought humans would surrender like all the other species they had conquered. They were wrong. Paul, charge the plasma conduits, Morrison ordered. We're going to ram their flagship. Sir, that's suicide. called out Lisa Rodriguez from her communications station. Maybe, Morrison replied. But if we're going to die, we're taking some of them with us. The Liberty's Edge picked up speed as it approached the alien flagship. The massive Zorvac vessel was still dealing with the damage from the Defiant Star's attack. Its shields were offline, and repair crews were working frantically to fix the holes in its hull. Morrison aimed his ship directly at the alien bridge. The cargo hauler was small compared to the enemy vessel, but it was moving very fast and carrying enough explosive cargo to level a city. The combination would create a devastating impact. "This is for everyone you killed," Morrison said quietly. The Liberty's Edge struck the alien flagship at full speed. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Both ships disappeared in a ball of fire and debris that took dozens of smaller alien vessels with it. Admiral Kethvar died in the explosion, along with most of his command staff. The Zorvac fleet, which had never lost a major ship in all their conquests, suddenly found themselves without their leader and facing an enemy that would rather die than surrender in the wreckage of the battle. The surviving human ships regrouped around the damaged Defiant Star. Captain Miller was still alive, barely, and he watched as the alien fleet began to retreat toward the outer system. "This is Admiral Wright to all ships," came the transmission. "We've hurt them. They can be beaten. Captain Morrison and Captain Miller have shown us the way. Now we make them pay for every world they've taken." For the first time since the war began, humanity had hope. The news of Captain Morrison's sacrifice spread through human space faster than light itself. On every world, in every space station, in every ship, humans heard the same message. The aliens could be hurt. The mighty Zorvac fleet that had conquered 17 star systems had lost their flagship to a simple cargo hauler. General Vexnall stood in the command center of his new flagship, staring at the reports of the battle. He had replaced Admiral Kethvar after the human attack destroyed the previous command ship. The loss of their leader and dozens of ships had shaken the Zorvac fleet to its core. "How many ships did we lose?" Vexnall asked his aide. 43 vessels destroyed or damaged beyond repair," came the reply. "The humans used some kind of frequency weapon that disrupted our shield generators. Our scientists are working to adapt our defenses." Vexnall studied the tactical display showing human and Zorvac positions throughout the solar system. The humans had not retreated to Earth as expected. Instead, they were spreading out, using hit-and-run tactics that the Zorvac had never encountered before. "These humans are different," he said to himself. "Every other species surrendered when they saw our power, but these creatures seem to get more dangerous when cornered." On Mars, the human fleet had established a new base of operations. Admiral Wright worked with Dr. Cooper to understand the modifications that Captain Morrison's crew had made to their cargo ship. The Liberty's Edge had been completely destroyed in the explosion, but they had recovered enough data to figure out what Morrison and his engineer had done. They connected every power cell on the ship to create a massive energy discharge. Dr. Cooper explained to the assembled ship captains, "It was crude, dangerous, and completely against every safety regulation we have. It was also brilliant." Captain Susan Hayes, who had served as communications officer on the Liberty's Edge before transferring to a military vessel, stepped forward. "I knew Captain Morrison and his crew. They weren't soldiers, but they understood something important. Sometimes you have to break the rules to win." Hayes had been on leave when the Liberty's Edge made its final journey. She had watched her former captain's sacrifice on the news feeds and felt both pride and terrible sadness. Morrison had saved her life by giving her that leave. Now she wanted to honor his memory. "We can modify civilian ships the same way," Hayes continued. "Cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger transports, they all have powerful engines and energy systems. We can turn them into weapons." Admiral Wright looked around the room at the faces of the ship captains. Most were military officers, but some were civilian captains who had volunteered to join the fight. They all had the same look in their eyes. They were angry, determined, and ready to make the aliens pay for what they had done. "Do it, Wright ordered. "Convert every ship that can be modified. We're going to show these aliens what human determination looks like." Within days, shipyards throughout human space were working around the clock. Cargo ships were fitted with weapons stolen from destroyed military vessels. Mining lasers were modified to punch through alien armor. Even passenger ships were converted into makeshift warships. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Wright, Admiral Wright's younger brother, led a group of volunteers in a daring raid on an alien supply depot. They used captured Zorvac fighters that had been salvaged from the battle wreckage. The aliens had never expected their own technology to be used against them. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy the depot," Danny said to his pilots as they approached the alien facility. "We want to capture their equipment intact. Intelligence says they have shield generators and weapon systems we can study." The raid was a complete success. The Zorvac defenders were caught off guard by fighters using their own technology and tactics. Within an hour, human forces had captured the entire facility, along with dozens of alien technicians and engineers. Dr. Cooper studied the captured alien technology with excitement. "Their systems are more advanced than ours, but they're not magic. We can learn from this. We can adapt." The Zorvac prisoners were different from what humans had expected. They were not the mindless monsters that propaganda had painted them as. They were intelligent, organized, and completely convinced that conquest was their right as the superior species. "You cannot win," one of the alien prisoners told his human interrogators. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Your resistance will only delay the inevitable." But the prisoner was wrong. Human resistance was not delaying anything. It was growing stronger every day. On the occupied worlds, human colonists who had been forced to surrender were beginning to fight back. They sabotaged alien equipment, attacked supply convoys, and sent intelligence to the free human forces. Commander Lisa Park had survived the destruction of Haven's Rest. By hiding in the research station's underground facilities, she now led a resistance cell that had been causing problems for the Zorvac occupation forces for weeks. "They expect us to stay conquered," she told her group of 20 volunteers. "They think that because they destroyed our defenses, we'll just accept their rule. They don't understand that every human is a potential soldier." Park's group had learned to make explosives from mining equipment. They had stolen alien weapons and figured out how to use them. Most importantly, they had discovered that the Zorvac soldiers were not as invincible as they seemed. Away from their ships and heavy equipment, they could be killed just like anyone else. The alien occupation was becoming more costly every day. General Vexnor found his forces spread thin across dozens of worlds, all of which required constant patrols to prevent human uprisings. Soldiers who should have been conquering new systems were instead fighting guerrilla wars on planets they thought they had already won. "Sir, we're receiving reports of attacks on 17 different worlds," his aide reported. "The humans are coordinating their resistance efforts." Dexnall felt something he had never experienced in all his years of conquest. Doubt every other species had accepted defeat after their military forces were destroyed. But humans seemed to consider military defeat as just the beginning of their real fight. "How many ships have we lost to these resistance attacks?" he asked. 47 vessels in the past month," came the reply. "Most were destroyed by improvised weapons or suicide attacks. The humans are using their own cargo ships as guided missiles." The general studied the tactical reports. Human forces were adapting faster than his scientists could create countermeasures. Every time the Zorvac developed new shield frequencies, the humans found ways to disrupt them. When the aliens changed their patrol patterns, human resistance cells changed their tactics to match. Captain Hayes led a flotilla of modified civilian ships in an attack on the Zorvac supply lines near Proxima Station. Her ship, a converted passenger liner, was armed with weapons salvaged from a dozen different sources. The crew was a mix of former cargo haulers, retired military officers, and civilian volunteers who had lost family members in the invasion. "Remember what Captain Morrison taught us," Hayes said over the communication system as they approached the alien convoy. "We don't have to be the biggest or the strongest. We just have to be willing to do whatever it takes to win." The battle at Proxima Station lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the human forces had captured enough alien technology to equip a dozen more ships. More importantly, they had proven that the Zorvac supply lines could be cut. General Dexnall received the news in his command center. Another defeat, another setback. The conquest that should have taken weeks was now in its 6th month with no end in sight. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving messages from the home fleet. They want to know when the conquest will be complete." Dexter looked at the tactical displays showing human forces attacking Zorvac positions throughout their captured territory. For the first time in his military career, he did not have an answer to give his superiors. The humans had learned to fight like their lives depended on it, because they did. 1 year after the war began, General Vexnall stood before a holographic map that showed the reality of the Zorvac situation. Red markers indicated human resistance activity on every occupied world. Yellow markers showed supply convoys under attack. Blue markers represented Zorvac forces that had gone silent and were presumed destroyed. "The conquest is failing," his second-in-command said quietly. "We control the major cities and spaceports, but the humans own everything else. Our casualties are mounting every day." Dexnall studied the reports from his field commanders. What should have been a simple occupation had turned into a nightmare. Human resistance fighters attacked at night and disappeared during the day. They used captured alien weapons better than some Zorvac soldiers. They turned their own technology into weapons of war. "How many ships have we lost this month?" the general asked. 63 vessels destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Most were lost to suicide attacks by modified human cargo ships. They're using the same tactic that destroyed Admiral Kethvar's flagship. The general felt a mixture of anger and grudging respect. These humans had turned their weakness into strength. Their cargo ships and civilian vessels, useless in normal combat, had become guided missiles that could destroy the largest Zorvac warships on Earth. President Santos addressed the planet from the rebuilt White House. The building had been damaged in an alien bombing raid 6 months earlier, but humans had repaired it within weeks. It had become a symbol of their refusal to give up. "My fellow humans," she said, looking directly into the cameras. 1 year ago, the aliens came to our space expecting easy conquest. They thought we would surrender like all the others. They were wrong." The president stood before a wall, displaying the names of everyone who had died in the war. Captain Morrison's name was at the top, followed by Captain Miller and thousands of others who had sacrificed their lives for human freedom. "We have learned that freedom is not free. It must be fought for, defended, and sometimes died for. Our brave men and women throughout human space have shown the galaxy what it means to be human. We do not kneel to tyrants. We do not surrender to bullies. We fight." Captain Hayes watched a speech from the bridge of her ship, the New Liberty, named in honor of Morrison's destroyed vessel. Her fleet of converted civilian ships was preparing for the largest operation of the war. Intelligence had located the main Zorvac supply depot at Kepler Station, the same place where humans had first captured alien technology. "All ships, this is Captain Hayes. Operation Last Stand begins in 6 hours. We're going to hit them where it hurts most. Their supplies, their equipment, their confidence." The New Liberty led a formation of 40 ships toward Kepler Station. Most were cargo haulers and passenger ships that had been converted into warships. They carried crews of volunteers who knew they might not survive the mission but were determined to strike a decisive blow against the invaders. Dr. Cooper worked frantically in his laboratory on Earth, analyzing the latest batch of captured alien technology. His team had made breakthrough after breakthrough, learning to use Zorvac systems against their creators. The frequency weapons that had started with Captain Miller's sacrifice were now standard equipment on human ships. "I think I've found something important," Cooper told Admiral Wright over the communication link. "The aliens' technology is designed for quick conquests. Their ships, their weapons, their supply systems. Everything is built for overwhelming an enemy fast and moving on to the next target." "What does that mean for us?" Wright asked. "It means they're not equipped for a long war. Their supply lines are stretched too thin. Their equipment breaks down without constant maintenance. They expected to win in weeks, not fight for years." Admiral Wright smiled for the first time in months. "So we just have to outlast them." "Exactly. Every day we keep fighting. We get stronger and they get weaker." At Kepler Station, the battle began before dawn. Captain Hayes led her ships in a coordinated attack on the alien depot, using tactics that the Zorvac had never encountered. Instead of fighting ship to ship, the humans split into small groups and attacked from multiple directions at once. Remember, we're not trying to destroy everything, Hayes broadcast to her fleet. We want to capture as much as possible. Every alien ship we take is one more weapon we can use against them. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, human forces had captured the entire depot, along with dozens of alien ships and thousands of tons of equipment. More importantly, they had cut the main supply line that fed the Zorvac occupation forces throughout human space. General Vexnol received the news while dealing with reports of uprisings on 6 different worlds. The loss of Kepler Station was the final blow to his already struggling campaign. Without supplies, his forces could not maintain their equipment. Without equipment, they could not control the territories they had conquered. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the High Command. His communications officer reported. They want a full report on the status of the conquest. Dexnall looked around his command center. Half his staff were wounded from recent human attacks. His flagship showed battle damage from a dozen encounters with human forces. The crew looked tired and demoralized. Tell them the truth, he said finally. The conquest has failed. These humans cannot be conquered through conventional means. They would rather die than surrender, and they're willing to take us with them. The transmission that went back to the Zorvac homeworlds carried a message that their leaders had never heard before. A conquest had failed. A species had refused to submit. The mighty Zorvac war machine had been stopped by cargo haulers and civilian volunteers. 3 days later, a new transmission reached human space. It was addressed to President Santos personally. I am General Vexnall of the Zorvac fleet. I wish to discuss terms for the withdrawal of our forces from your territory. President Santos read the message 3 times before she believed it. The aliens wanted to negotiate. After a year of war, after millions of deaths, after the destruction of entire worlds, the invaders were ready to talk. What are our terms? Admiral Wright asked when the War Council met to discuss the alien offer. Complete withdrawal from all human territory, President Santos replied. Return of all prisoners, compensation for the worlds they destroyed, and a promise that they will never return. And if they refuse, Wright asked, then we keep fighting until there are no more alien ships in human space. The negotiations took place on a neutral space station at the edge of the solar system. General Vexnall met with President Santos, Admiral Wright, and Dr. Cooper. The alien general looked older and more tired than when the war had begun. Your species is unlike any we have encountered, Dexnall said. Most civilizations understand when they are defeated. You seem to consider defeat as motivation to fight harder. Freedom is worth fighting for, President Santos replied. That's something you'll never understand as long as you believe in conquest instead of cooperation. The final peace treaty was signed 6 months later. The Zorvac fleet withdrew from human space, carrying with them a new understanding of what it meant to face true resistance. They left behind damaged worlds, but also a stronger and more united humanity. Captain Hayes stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Liberty's Edge, now a memorial ship that toured human space telling the story of the war. She thought about Captain Morrison and all the others who had given their lives to prove that humans would never surrender. They came here expecting no resistance, she said to the group of school children touring the ship. They learned that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The children looked out at the stars, where human ships now patrolled to ensure that freedom would never again be threatened by those who believed might made right in space. As on Earth, the price of liberty was eternal vigilance, and humanity was ready to pay that price.